Tubercular meningitis is one of the most common, or you can say that the patient dies. There are many less number of conditions where we can expect the patient can die. This is one of those conditions, and mortality is around 20 to 50%. Let's check it, but it's around 20 to 50% mortality. So if you get two patients of TBM, one may die. So it's a very serious condition, not like pyogenic meningitis where there is much scope of improvement. Okay, so what is this? It is tubercular meningitis. In short form, we call it TBM. TBM. And this is the most severe form of extrapulmonary TB. So if you get TB in multiple areas, this is the most severe form. So that means we have to be on high alert. Now, because this is high morbidity and high mortality, I already said that mortality is around 50% and the morbidity can go up to 70 to 80%. Okay, so even if they survive, they become like a vegetative state most of the times. Okay, so it is common in BCG naive cases, that means who have not been vaccinated. Suppose many countries they don't give BCG, so they come to India. Suppose they obviously take BCG before they come to India, but suppose if somebody comes or very little child, so then they may get TBM. And then undernourished, obviously malnutrition, and that's recurrent cycle of malnutrition and infections. So immunocompromised children can get which kind of compromised child? Give an example. Give an example, Ayushbal. Which kind of immunocompromised patient get TBM very commonly? Immunocompromised. HIV. HIV only. Oh, achha. I heard prematurity. Okay. Okay. So etiopathogenesis. So like other meningitis, this is like the hematogenous spread. So what happens from blood? It goes towards brain and it crosses the blood-brain barrier. So normally the blood-brain barrier is protected, but in case of inflammation, when the blood-brain barrier is inflamed, then it's very penetrable to the mycobacterium. Okay. Now what happens? It forms it's a kind of a foci, like a small foci. It starts making a foci, and there is a margin around that. So it stays there. It stays there in dormant stage. Then finally, once it is activated because of the immunocompromised nature or whatever prolonged treatment, aste. Okay, so then it ruptures. It ruptures and then spreads to the brain, like the whole brain. Okay, and so what happens, because it's a all pervading kind of inflammation. Now there is some exudation. For any kind of inflammation, there will be exudation. Now, where is that exudation goes? It goes to the base of the brain. So it's very difficult to catch in normally. Like if you have to get a good CT slides and everything to get that exudate. Okay, right. And then what it does, it actually blocks the area because the exudate, it's very thick in nature. So it will block the CSF flow and cause hydrocephalus. And it may also cause vasculitis and inflammation, like the similar way, because it causes inflammation all over. So it will cause a vasculitis and infarction. So brain infarction is also very common, but most common complication will be hydrocephalus. Right. Now there are some stages of TBM. Like in first stage, why it is important? Because we may not even understand that we are dealing with a case of TBM unless it reaches the second stage. So it's very difficult, but it's very important to catch that in the stage 1 itself. Okay, but see, there are no neuroscience. No neuroscience, only fever, malaise, fatigue. So you will think in the line of PUO, pyrexia of unknown origin. You think about scrap typhus, typhoid, but then suddenly the patient maybe one night they will just say that I'm having headache and then vomiting, then total paralysis or kind of stroke or infarct, whatever happens. So the gap between this stage is around 2 weeks, stage 1 to stage 2. But the gap between these 2 to 3 is very fast. So very soon they will be like headache, vomiting, some kind of cranial nerve palsy, and then suddenly into coma. And now it's very difficult for you to revive the patient. Okay. So just remember that even TBM can come with 2 weeks, more than 2 weeks of fever. Okay. So what are the symptoms? I have already told that the symptoms are headache. Generally, like any meningitis, so it will be headache. Now, headache, remember that mostly the children below say 5 years, they cannot complain about headache. They may show the head, they may like scratch it, but in general you can see irritability. Headache hoyeche, bhalo lagche na, that is the kind of state you get. Then seizures, obviously, then coma. So this starts the headache, vomiting because of raised ICT, vomiting will be there, and then seizures and coma. They go straightly to coma. Fine. Then eye findings. So what are the eye findings? These are the neuro findings only, but we get it in the eye. Okay, so it is cranial nerve, third and sixth. So both will be paralyzed. Most common is what? Which cranial nerve is mostly affected in case of raised ICT? No. Which is the longest cranial nerve? No, sorry. The inside, intracranial part. Sixth. But এরকম ভাবে ঘুরে যায় না? Intracranial part. So, sixth cranial nerve is the most commonly affected cranial nerve in case of raised ICT. Okay? Fine. Then, abducent nerve. Okay. And then it can cause papilledema also because of there is raised ICT, then papilledema. And then in systemic, as I told you, that just be very cautious that fever more than 2 weeks, vomiting, irritability, these all can be features of TBM. So not necessarily there will be some neurosign. Okay. So now the diagnosis. So how do we diagnose? Obviously we will do a CSF study. Right? And in your SGT, I think that there was a class of CSF charts done already. Okay. So we can see, I already said that there will be a thick exudate. That means the protein will be very high. Cobweb formation, right? So the protein will be very high and the glucose will be low. It is similar to pyogenic, but it is much higher. Okay. And then lymphocytic pleocytosis. Lymphocytes will be very high. So this is one clue. Now CBNet or TrueNet, we also call it what? GeneXpert. So we try to find the, this is a kind of a PCR. So GeneXpert from CSF, but this is a supportive evidence. I'll tell you why. Supportive evidence because we cannot totally rely on the GeneXpert because the yield is not very good. Okay. So in CSF, it's very important to do other imaging or whatever is very early because we cannot totally rely on the GeneXpert. Okay. Then imaging, obviously we'll do MRI, CT scan that will show basal exudates and hydrocephalus and infarcts. This is the slide basically, the comparative slide that is taken in SGT, but this has not come well. So these are the basal exudates. See all these white places. So this is the base of the brain. Okay. I hope I'm saying right. Right? These are the basal exudates. Okay. And this is the hydrocephalus. Yes, that I know. So this is hydrocephalus. Okay. Even this has good basal exudates. And also you can get a good amount of edema as well, cerebral edema. Okay. Oh, sir has given one extra slide. So CBNAT, basically, it's commonly called gene expert. Huh? It plays an important. This is what I was trying to say. This is the thing. This plays a supportive role in the diagnosis of tubercular meningitis. Because why? Because the yield. This is not a standalone test because typically low bacillary load. So we don't get the Mycobacterium bacilli there. Not very much. Little amount. Okay. So that is why it's very difficult to catch it. Fine. Okay. Then we come to management. So what is the management? Basic management of all TB. But remember, the continuation phase will be very prolonged. Okay. So it is near about 10 months. Not near about, but 10 months. So first 2 months is what we call it? Induction phase. Intensive phase, and then continuation phase. Right. So, second. So these are the drugs like isoniazid, rifampicin, pyrazinamide and ethambutol. So these 4 drugs for first intensive phase, and that is 2 months. And these all drugs have good CSF penetration. Okay, so we start with this, and then we go to the continuation phase. See, this is the difference, that 10 months. So isoniazid and rifampicin, so H and R till 10 months. And it's a good idea to avoid short courses. Many people, they start with maybe 2 and 6 months, like the normal thing, but it is not right. Okay. And then what is steroid? So this is one kind of infection, TBM, where we have to start steroid very early. Why? Because it decreases the morbidity, it decreases the complication. It may look very odd that the patient is already immunocompromised. Now we are giving steroids, but yes, steroid can, if we start it at good time, so then it actually saves the patient. Okay, chalo. So then supportive, obviously, there will be anticonvulsant, then mannitol, just to decrease the raised ICT. Then we can give 3% NaCl also, shunt in case of hydrocephalus. So once we have given the treatment, now we can see that the infection has subsided. It takes about 2 weeks to make the CSF sterile. Then we can go for shunt in case of a huge hydrocephalus, right? So shunt we can do. That I have given, okay, fine. Then adjunctive corticosteroid. So it is recommended in all TBM patients. Remember, in all children with TBM, we give steroids, especially in the stage of 2 and 3. Now remember, it's very early, like the gap between stage 2 and 3 is very low. Okay. Now prednisolone equivalent, so that is 2 to 4 mg. Remember, even this is a little higher dose. So 2 to 4 mg per kg for 6 weeks. For 4 weeks we give, and then we taper over next 2 to 4 weeks. Right. So that is how we give steroids. So what is the benefit? As I said, that it is the decrease in the mortality. So if I can start the steroids very early, then I can prevent the mortality. The neurological sequelae is also less. Okay. Then the raised ICT and the CSF inflammation, so we can decrease the steroid. In fact, it is very good for preventing the papilledema. So we can save the eye also, and then these ears. Fine. Because it affects the cranial nerves. Now remember, if I can decrease the inflammation, so all the cranial nerves will be spared, right? Okay. Now complications. So now for TBM there are some complications, and for medicines also there will be some complications. So what are the complications? As I said, the hydrocephalus. So in the medical part, we can give acetazolamide and furosemide, or mannitol, or 3% NaCl to decrease the cerebral edema. And then surgical, we can go for a VP shunt. Okay, if it is progressive. ETV, I don't know. What is ETV? Anybody? Raised ICT. So head elevation, mannitol, hypertonic saline. The same thing. Head elevation. How much elevated? It's a good idea to keep it 30. Neuroprotections. There are steps of neuroprotection. I hope that is taught to you in surgery and all polytrauma cases. So it is the neuroprotective things that we have to do. Then seizures. So anticonvulsants, especially the levetiracetam. In case of early stage, we can start, and then hyponatremia. So it may cause SIAD. Okay. Then versus cerebral skull twisting. Okay, so leave it. So complications already told, but cerebral palsy, sorry, hydrocephalus, then cranial nerve palsy, then hemiplegia, hearing loss, vision loss, already told, and then epilepsy, and it leads to ultimately death, coma and death. Okay. So how to prevent? So BCG at birth, definitely in our country, where everything we suspect TB in almost every patient if it is not getting well. Okay, so then prevention is contact tracing. So we have to see whether the child is in contact with a TB patient. Maybe in family there is some patient with, so it may happen that the patient is in contact with a pulmonary TB, but they may present with a CNS TB, right? Okay, and then early treatment. So that is how early TB treatment if we start. So the focus may be somewhere else also, and it has reached up to my like the CNS. Okay. Okay, now the difference between TBM, I think I already discussed this. And it is done in SGT also. Okay. So what? Follow up and monitoring. So 6 monthly clinical review. The purotai puri dilo. Oh, acha. So 6 monthly clinical review for the first 6 months. Then we have to monitor the LFTs, Anti-TB, yeah. Tick. Ekdom. Right. So vision also for the similar thing. Vision, hearing that we have to monitor, and MRI in case of deterioration. So say there is a patient, we did MRI. So initially maybe the MRI showed a little bit of problems, some exudates and all. We started treatment, and then the patient deteriorated. Okay. So what happens then? We have to again repeat the MRI. We don't hesitate to do that. Then adjust therapy if some complications or resistance. Okay. So if there is some complication, we have to adjust the treatment like that, and also the resistance. Okay. Now what if the drug resistance? So there may be some conditions where the bacteria or the Mycobacterium tuberculosis is actually resistant to the medicines given. Okay, so it can be rifampicin resistance. So so we have to go for second line test. Okay, so we have to do DST based is basically DPT based, drug susceptibility test. So we can do it for many other infections as well. So what we do, we go give it for culture. Now we see that which drug is actually susceptible. Okay, like the way we do our urine culture and we see that this is sensitive, that way. Okay, so that way we normally give. So what are the second lines? It can be fluoroquinolone, linezolid, cycloserine, and many other injectable second line drugs as well. But the duration this time becomes a much longer. So that is around 18 to 20 months. So summarize, summarize, start ATT immediately. Do not hesitate. Okay, only for TB, we can say that we have to keep a very high clinical suspicion. Very high degree of clinical suspicion. If we feel that this can be TB, we should not hesitate to start medicine. Though it has a long course, there are many other things, but if we are thinking, there are no such evidence right now, but yeah, we may start. Okay. Then add steroid and taper. So adding steroid is the second most important step. Then manage all complications promptly as they come, and provide full supportive care, and then monitor closely and adjust as needed. Okay, so we have to monitor the drugs, monitor the complication for TBM, complication for medicines. So it's a long time, it goes up to years. There are many children with TBM, they are going to follow up for almost 5 years. Okay, so supportive care and rehabilitation. So obviously, if this is a prolonged illness, and any kind of prolonged illness will obviously cause malnutrition. There will be so much admitted there, then receive all these medicines. There may be vomiting. So we have to give them for a nutritional support. Then physiotherapy, occupational therapy, the same thing in my class. Remember. So those things we have to do. We have to rehabilitate them early. That whatever is their demand, so that what do we want? We want to be that we want to help them to establish their activities of daily living. They should not be dependent, right? Right. So vision and hearing monitoring, because we are giving ethambutol, and also the TB can cause nerve palsies. Huh? And then the developmental and psychological support, because this is a long kind of illness. It will definitely cause depression. So for that, we may need to give antipsychotic medicines like antipsychotic medicines, SSRI and everything. And then obviously psychological help. Okay, now question. So most common cranial already discussed. Sixth nerve. Okay, then CSF and TBM shows hyper. Answer is written only. Okay. Then preferred rapid test is CBNAT. But this is not a supportive test. Very good. Chalo. Okay. So what are the scenarios that may come? So 2-year-old with fever with cranial nerve palsy and MRI shows basal exudates. Obviously, we'll think about TBM. Then 6 months old with vomiting and bulging fontanelle. As I said, we have to feel it. Raised ICP, hydrocephalus. So that we can think of. See, this is very. Even in case of say a child, remember that even UTI can cause this. So when a child cries, when you see anterior fontanelle, just a random question. Obviously not the baby is crying. Okay, do not try to feel for fontanelle when the baby is crying. Because when the baby cries, it will be already bulged. Okay, so you have to put them, calm them down. Probably in case of 6 months, you can go for breastfeeding and then palpate it. Okay, right. So if 6 months will vomiting and bulging fontanelle come, we can think of TBM. Okay. Then TB contact with seizures. So we had a history that, okay, the grandfather had TB, or he had traveled to some place where the relative had TB, and now the patient has come with seizures. Very difficult to elicit the history though. Okay. Then treated TBM with cognitive delay. So it may come as a cases. I think Sir has tried to put those up. So a treated TBM with cognitive delay. So that may come into your exam. It will look kind of like cerebral palsy. The history will start from very late. Okay. Papilledema with cranial nerve deficit. So we'll think of meningitis and preferably the tubercular meningitis.
It is a very important topic, tuberculosis meningitis, because till now the mortality is high and also morbidity is also high. Not only mortality, but also morbidity is also high. And definitely you know at this time it is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and it is usually not primary, it is secondary. It means there must be some first infection in the lungs, and then the bacteria spreads to the brain. And where it spreads? Usually tuberculosis bacilli form some focus. Just like primary focus in the lung, they will focus in the meninges, particularly at the base of the meninges, and that's called Rick's focus. RIC is Rick's focus. And when the immunity is depressed, that Rick's focus, the organisms they spread and they infect the meninges. Usually basal meninges, they are mostly informed, and tuberculosis meningitis usually gives rise to basal meningitis, and then the overall meningeal involvement may be there. As they contain large amount of protein, there is more and more adhesive in nature because thick protein, and it can give rise to poor drainage of the CSF fluid from the subarachnoid space. If there is poor drainage of the CSF fluid, then there will be accumulation of the CSF, and that can give rise to hydrocephalus. And that hydrocephalus is communicating hydrocephalus. There are two types of hydrocephalus, either obstructive or communicating. Obstructive means there is obstruction in the aqueduct of sylvius connecting to third and fourth ventricle. And if there is obstruction, common example is mumps virus. In the intrauterine life, mother is suffering from mumps, that can give rise to some immunological reactions, and there is blockage of the aqueduct of sylvius, and that is called obstructive hydrocephalus. And communicating means there is some poor absorption from the subarachnoid space. There is some inflammation, as in tuberculous meningitis or bacterial meningitis, and this inflammation causes poor absorptions from the subarachnoid space. That is the reason why there is communicating hydrocephalus. Now, what is the pathogenesis is clear. There is some focus in the chest that is spread by hematogenous spread to the brain. There is focus in the brain called Rick's focus. This is pathogenesis. What is the pathology? That bacilli spread to the meninges, give rise to basal meningitis and exudation, and three things may happen. First one is meningitis and its sequelae or problems arising from the meningitis. Second one is vasculitis, vessel junction. And third one is due to vasculitis or due to blockage, there is some infarction, tissue damage. And fourth one is that is not usual, but that maybe there is some involvement of the brain itself, that's called tuberculous encephalopathy. So lots of complications and clinical features based on these features. We divide usually the clinical features into three groups: stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. Stage 1 means some low-grade fevers, prodromal stage, and low-grade fever, there is some headache, irritability, poor feeling, etc. Stage 2, in addition to these, there is some involvement of meninges, there is convulsion. Convulsion or any focal lesion may be there, either hemiplegia or anything. Stage 2. Stage 3 means there is some alteration of the sensorium. Okay, that is coma. Stage 3. Alteration of the sensorium, not drowsy, but comatose conditions. Prognosis depends on the stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. In the stage 1, prognosis is good. In stage 2, prognosis is not good. In 50% of cases, there are chances of morbidity, and mortality is higher in stage 2, 20 to 30%. In stage 3, the morbidity, when the coma is there, morbidity means 100%, mortality is 50% and about. So stage 3 is dangerous. So we should not allow to pass the tuberculous meningitis to stage 3. Most aim should be early diagnosis and management. So with these different stages, as discussed Dr. Mondira previously, CSF is also discussed. If you do the CSF, there is a very important investigations. And if you do the CSF, you will see the high protein and lymphocytes and low glucose. Okay, but the range of the protein level is more higher than pyogenic meningitis. Prognosis also in pyogenic meningitis is good if you treat it early. In tuberculous meningitis, if it is late, the prognosis is bad, but if you treat it early, then prognosis is good. Now, there are also another term is viral meningitis. It is also known as aseptic meningitis. It may be following some mumps virus or measles virus, etc. Measles virus usually gives rise to encephalopathy or encephalitis, but usually meningitis is unlikely with measles, because mumps virus can give rise to meningitis, aseptic meningitis. In that case, the importance is that there may be protein level may be variable, usually not IgIH pyogenic or tuberculous meningitis, and glucose level is more or less normal, but mumps virus can give rise to slightly lower glucose level. This is the important characteristic of mumps virus. In other cases of other viral meningitis, the ecovirus or enterovirus or some other things, the sugar level is usually normal. It's a differentiating point. But in mumps virus, the sugar level may be low. Sometimes it is given in question also. The complications of tuberculosis meningitis in relation to those complication due to some involvement of the lesions, lots of complications may happen in tuberculosis meningitis, starting from the hemiplegia, monoplegia, starting to loss of vision also due to involvement, and also there may be some involvement of particular area of the brain, sometimes very important complications, and it is also diagnostic also, helps in diagnosis as a hydrocephalus, very early. Hydrocephalus is very important, and sometimes it is considered as a diagnostic point in tuberculosis meningitis. Clinical pictures, CSF study, and basal meningitis is the three important clues for diagnosis. Clinical pictures number 1, CSF study 2, and 3 if you do the MRI or CT scan, preferably MRI will give the basal meningitis. And hydrocephalus may be associated with that. And in early cases of hydrocephalus, it will be ventriculoperitoneal shunt. If you are able to drain the shunt, then it is good. Prognosis is good. I have seen one patient which at the age of 4 years, now the child passed engineering and doing works on the outside of the country in USA, but developed tuberculosis meningitis at the age of earliest toddler periods, 2 to 3 years, then developed hydrocephalus, and immediately parents took step and do the ventriculoperitoneal shunt. And nowadays the shunt is available which are progressively increased. With increasing age of the child, shunt length is also increasing. So there is no need of any change of the shunt, except you should take care of the shunt, whether there is any infection or whether the shunt is active or not. And the only thing that you can do is just give a pressure on that shunt area, shunt pipe. If that is tender and the child is suffering some fever or other things, it indicates there is some infection of the shunt. So hydrocephalus in tuberculosis meningitis, diagnostic as well as very early indicator for intervention also, so that there is no damage. Otherwise, there are lots of other problems in tuberculosis meningitis. It may affect any part of the brain. Let us study if it affects the cortical part of the brain, there may be development of some behavioral abnormality, and this child in future after treatment may give rise to neurodevelopmental disorders. Okay. Now go to the other areas. Say if there is involvement of the Broca's area of the speech and other things, there may be difficulty in speech or aphasia may be one of the manifestation. Then if it affects the occipital lobe, say area 17, 18, 19, etc., the child may suffer from visual loss, vision blindness may be there, cortical blindness. Sometimes it may be due to direct involvement of the optic nerve or due to some effect of the drug on the optic nerve. Though it is not common in India, it is common in Japan. It is more common in Japan because of some genetic variation. It is genetic susceptibility. It is not common in India. Ethambutol can give rise to optic neuritis in Japan people. But in India, ethambutol is allowed to do. We are allowing ethambutol. Government of India, and who also recommends ethambutol for treatment of the tuberculosis meningitis in children of India in other areas. So you see there are chances of the optic neuritis. This is one important thing that can give rise to also blindness. And if you go to the other areas, say if the basal ganglia is involved, there may be disorders of the say extrapyramidal syndrome may be there. some sort of say tremor, some sort of say movement abnormality may be there. If there is involvement of the red nucleus, the child may suffer from Bobel-Dollard syndrome, Bobel-Doll head syndrome. There is the movement of head of the child is moving like this, doll head. Because the red nucleus controls the head and neck. Red nucleus controls the head and neck. If there is poor control due to involvement of the red nucleus, that can give to Bobel-Dollard syndrome. Okay. It may give rise to the other tracts, so sometimes space the spinal cord also, not confined to the brain, it can give rise to problems related to the spinal cord problems, spinal meningitis. So these are the different involvement, different damage by the tuberculosis, and sometimes the patient may pass on to this damage the reticular activating system. Reticular activating system of the say pons medulla and the other midbrain etc. And that can give rise to the problems related to the sensory and motor function, and patient may pass on to the either decorticated or disabled rigidity. And ultimate fate is death. So all these types of problems may appear in the case of tuberculous meningitis, and you will have to treat it very early and diagnose it early because it is very dangerous things. So how to diagnose, that is already discussed. The treatment is, you should start with 4-drug therapy, definitely 4 drugs. And this 4-drug therapy, I think it is discussed, the 4-drug therapy should be discussed. Pyrazinamide should be given, definitely rifampicin, linase, pyrazinamide and ethambutol should be given. CSF penetration is not good for all drugs. Okay, so you will have to give these 4 drugs for at least 2 months, and then you give the 10 months another 2 drugs, or 2 or 3 drugs. He says, yeah, nowadays it is recommended for 3 drugs. Thank you. 3 drugs recommendation for the continuation phase, or 2 drugs, 2 drugs. Ethambutol and ionized and rifampicin. HR, rifampicin, yes. So 2 drugs therapy can be given. In case of severe complicated tuberculosis, 3 drugs therapy should be given. And the continuation therapy should be up to 10 months, and it may be up to 12 months depending on the situation. Complicated.
Drug resistance.
And in some cases, use of drug-resistant tuberculosis, and the modern diagnosis of tuberculosis is by CBNAT. Modern diagnosis of tuberculosis by the CBNAT. The investigation of tuberculosis, just like first CSF study, clinical pictures, basal meningitis, and other investigation like CBNAT. In children, you can do the gastric lavage aspiration, and send it for CBNAT. In some older children, you can give rise to induced sputum. Just give some saline inhalation to the child and stimulate for coughing, and when the sputum is out, you send it for CBNAT examination. Sometimes CSF may be sent, though the yield is not good, and blood may also be sent when there is hematogenous spread. So these are the all cases where the cartridge-based nucleic acid amplification test or CBNAT test may be done, or gene expert study may be done. So gene, you can diagnose the proliferation of the gene, DNA, you can. Sometimes it may also fail. And then in that case, you should take the other alter investigation strategy. Gene expert or CBNAT can diagnose the bacillus, tuberculosis bacillus, as well as if there is any resistance to rifampicin. They can analyze only for resistance to rifampicin. If there is, you to get any resistance to rifampicin, you should send for dark sensitivity test. Suppose you are getting the gene expert is giving you the rifampicin resistance, and you should do the dark sensitivity test. What it may be, though, you should find out the diagnosis and other things. Prevention. Prevention, BCG vaccination is must. BCG vaccination. BCG cannot prevent the pulmonary tuberculosis, but it can prevent the disseminated tuberculosis. This is important thing. And the prophylactic INAs may be given to the children if the child is less than 5 years and in contact with the tuberculosis patient, open case of tuberculosis patient. So if a child is in contact with tuberculosis patient, you should first find out whether the child is suffering from tuberculosis or not. Do the X-ray, do the CBNAT and other test. And some people say Mantoux test may be done, but Mantoux test nowadays there is some controversy. You do that shit. Similarly, the interferon gamma release assay or IGRA test, that is also says same thing, controversy. That is determined what is the interferon gamma which is released by lymphocytes when the sample is given to the reagent. And that is also not a costly test, not done in India, not accepted by, say, in the government or IIB. So, chest X-ray is very important to see the primary focus, and then you can do the CBNAT test to find out the tuberculosis diagnosis. If the tuberculosis is there, you should give the treatment of tuberculosis. If the tuberculosis is not there, you should give the treatment of contact, give INH 10 mg per kg for 6 months. Previously, we thought you should give INH and information. Now the matter is changed to INH, give INH for 6 months. This is the prevention of tuberculosis and also contact testing. Sometimes the term is called latent tuberculosis. It means the tuberculosis is latent or undetected. That is the patient in contact with tuberculosis or the persons who are in contact with tuberculosis. Suppose the husband is suffering from tuberculosis and wife is not tested. They should be tested. When the child is in contact with tuberculosis, it is not tested. In that case, you should find out the tuberculosis by doing the test. And latent tuberculosis is defined as this, where there is any positivity in the children, either usually by the Mantoux test, or IGRA test, and the child is in contact with tuberculosis patient. In that case, it's called latent tuberculosis. So that, as it is very difficult to diagnose, it is considered by the Indian Academy of Pediatrics, also Government of India, that in all cases of children below the age of 5 years coming in contact, give 6 months of INH.